Hey everyone, it's Luke here from Astro Awakening. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be a little bit about a lot of things, actually. We're going to look at the astrology. I've been looking at the astrology lately and looking ahead this year and just sort of looking at some pretty intense energetic instability is probably the best way to describe it. And this would be Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that's happening next month. As well as Saturn moving into a position which is squaring the nodes, which is going to be in that position for quite some time. Saturn is the lord of karma, and the nodes are really karmic too. It's about the past and the future. It's about overcoming and letting go of the past and moving towards our destiny. So this is a really interesting astrological alignment that we're going to start to sort of see building. And I'm always interested in what's happening in the world, looking at what's going on in the astrology, and then tying these things together. And there's no, put it this way, when we do look into the world that's being presented to us at the moment by mainstream media, you would be thinking to yourself, like, what the actual fuck is going on, right? And for those of us on our awakening journey, me since 2014, 15, through till now, everyone that's had their awakening over the last 2 years due to the pandemic, you're sort of looking and going, what the actual fuck is going on? Like, we've lived through 2 years of media manipulation and propaganda to push an agenda, right? So that agenda that they've been pushing, within 24 hours just went and disappeared completely. And what was replaced in that time was Putin, right? And it was just like this big bait and switch, just all of a sudden, where did the Rona go? Now it's, World War III. And you've had people that have been calling out the media for the last 2 years on all of the hype and propaganda and lies and misleading and over emphasizing and fear mongering. And then all of a sudden, something new comes along and it's just like, oh no, pray for Ukraine. And again, I'm not saying anything about the Ukrainian people because there's always casualties to every war, but these wars aren't people's wars. They're not our wars. These are the elites' wars. They're money wars, bankers' wars, elites' wars, they're oil wars, they're energy wars. They're just not the people's wars. We get caught up in them. So this is nothing against the people that are actually the victims of this. And I'm not going to get into whether he's a good man or he's a bad man or he did that and whatever. But what I can tell you is that from my perspective, the powers, that word, powers that be, are the empire. Now think Star Wars, right? And you've got the Empire, and then you've got the Jedi, right? The Empire, in astrology, that empire building, right, is about power, control, greed, more, right? That's what they want. They want more control, they want more money, they want more power, and that's what the empire literally is. What happened in the pandemic? Well, they wanted more control. So they took more control from people by, locking down, masking up, no job, no jab, no jab, no job. It's this classic, that energy is Jupiterian. We're in the age of Pisces, so we've had a lot of that energy that's sort of been controlling and power sucking, right, out of humanity and the collective. And we're still in the age of Pisces. So Jupiter is a powerful planet. He's the god of this era, basically. So those elites in positions of power are channeling into the Jupiterian energy, not only in the cosmos, but, just in consciousness, that aspect of consciousness. And what's been very obvious, especially since the pandemic, although it's been going on for quite some time, is their overreach. Again, all these themes are Jupiterian, right? They're Jupiterian. In the Star Wars movies, if you have the Empire representing, Jupiter representing the Empire, right? So the Empire Strikes Back, the Sith, the Dark Lords, Palpatine, all those dark characters, right? Which a friend of mine told me late last year, she said, if you want the truth, watch the movies. If you want the propaganda, watch the news. And it's so obvious because there's so much occult symbolism through the movies, through music, literature. There's so much occult symbolism embedded in that. And if you're able to understand the symbolism, you're able to sort of see what they're trying to convey. They're conveying a symbolic or metaphoric message, right? And they're doing it through their movies, Hollywood, right? The magicians want. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad. It just is what it is. They're literally, it's like this, you know, one of the things that we have here on the earthbound plane is free will. So we have to consent. So if they show us in symbolism and we don't, you know, resist that or deny it, we're consenting to it. So there's a lot of that going on with Hollywood, with their movies. But it enables us too, as well, when you're more awakened, to use the symbolism to be able to go, oh, look what's going on. And there's no more, I feel, fitting symbolism for the last, you know, 40 years than the Star Wars movies. They're very spiritual movies, very occult, very esoteric. And if you watch those right through from start to finish, you can get a lot of the symbolic, metaphoric understanding of what this battle is going on here. You really do have an empire. We have empire, right? And we do have the other side, which we call the resistance or the rebellion. And if the empire is Jupiter, well, who is the Jedi? Well, they're Saturn. Why Saturn? Because it's an apprenticeship. It's a discipleship. You got to be chosen. It's a hard work. There's a lot of training goes into that. You know, they have their mentors with their hierarchy. These are all themes of Saturn. Saturn is exacting. Saturn's patient. Saturn is, you know, the hard taskmaster. But if you want to master anything, and becoming a master Jedi, right? If you want to master anything, it's Saturn energy. It's methodical, pragmatic, practical. It's persistent. It's patience. It's step by step. It's, you know, not claiming the glory before you've done the effort to reach the reward. It's a lot of effort equals reward. It's reaping what you sow. You put in good seeds, do good deeds, you get rewarded for that. And why am I talking about these things now? Because with what's going on in the world and what's happening in the sky, if we go back a little bit and we look to a very significant astrological alignment, that people were like, you know, nothing really happened, because we place these expectations that, oh, we see something significant astrological and something's going to happen. And I've been guilty of it myself. But it's more of what it represents symbolically as a turning point. And what I would say is what we're witnessing is a changing of the guard. We are witnessing the fall of empire and the rise of the Jedi, literally. And the astrological alignment that timed this transition wasn't very long ago. What was it? Well, it was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happened on the Winter Solstice at the end of 2020. And that's the turning point. That's the turning point. But like all turning points, or imagine a turning point like a new moon. The new moon is a quiet time and of placing the seed. It's not where things happen. It's where the seed is placed for the change to occur later and the developmental cycle. So that point was seed. But what I feel we're getting to in 2022, especially with what's coming in the next couple of months with the astrology, is I think we're starting to see the development of that seed. And when I was analyzing the astrology for, you know, March and April and into May, I was looking at, like most astrologers do, looking at the significations of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction happening in Pisces, which is a fucking huge astrological alignment. So let's take a look at the chart so you can sort of see. But before we get to that point, I'm going to show you a few things that are interesting about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the winter solstice. the solstice points and the equinox points are the cardinal points within the sky, right? They are very significant. They relate to prominence. So if you're born on one of those points, right, the equinox or the solstice, there's usually prominence in your life. You have a lot of power. As far as energetic points go in a birth chart, there's significant points. When you have a planetary alignment, making an aspect or crossing over those cardinal points, things are definitely happening within your world. There is great change or transformation or things that you can point to as very significant. Oh, wow, look, that's going on. Because they are these really power points, the cardinal points. So to have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the solstice, on the cardinal point, right? So for us in the Southern Hemisphere, it's our summer solstice. For the Northern Hemisphere, and what it's known as in astrology is the Winter Solstice, which is when the sun moves into Capricorn. Okay, so the interesting thing is what was happening with Jupiter and Saturn, because when they come together in the sky, Jupiter and Saturn come together roughly every 20 years, just shy of 20 years. So you have expansion, empire, and you have rules, authority, and restriction. And the combination of those two together really sets the tone for the evolution of the society and the way in which society and culture and the laws that govern that society and culture are going to move in the next 20-year period. What was significant about this Jupiter and Saturn conjunction is it happened in the Western tropical zodiac. It happened in the sign of Aquarius, which is setting a beginning of these conjunctions happening in air signs for the next 200 odd years. And I believe personally that within this period of time, we're going to be fully transitioning out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. Where I think we are with that transition at the moment is in orb of influence, right? And there is this crossover where we're still in the age of Pisces 100%, but we are getting a lot of Aquarian influence coming through. And you could say that pretty much the Industrial Revolution is the beginning of that. And then where it really started to take off and speed up and went was the invention of the internet, right? Because the internet is about a technology, an invented technology, Aquarian, that connects all people, humanity, Aquarian, through information, Aquarian, air. Air is information, right? So the internet is like, you can't argue. We are not in a Pisces only era. We're in a Pisces crossover Aquarius era. We have these sort of crossover points with some of these transitions of ages happen really defining. Others are blended energy. And the Pisces Aquarian is a blended energy. Think about it like this. If you want to go and watch the sunrise, if you're fortunate to live on the east coast of Australia, you get to watch the sunrise over the water, which is spectacular. So at the moment, it's around 6, not quite 6 in the morning, right? And then we get to the equinox, it'll be usually around 6 a.m. So if you go to the beach at about 5 a.m., an hour before, you'll just start to see a little bit of light coming through the new day, but you won't see the sun. In other words, that sun hasn't peaked over the horizon yet. And therefore, you're still getting the influence of that new day, that new sun that's going to rise, but yet it hasn't risen. And the crossing over of this Pisces age into Aquarius is a lot like that. We are right towards the end of Pisces. The dawning of the age of Aquarius is literally happening, but the actual point where we transition hasn't happened. And I reckon, because I do know there's been a manipulation of time and space. And a lady on the internet that I follow, Lavette, she's got a YouTube channel as well as on Brighteon. She's 11. She thinks that the Fukushima earthquake moved us on the precession a degree and took off a whole period of time. So I don't know if that's accurate, but I might, well, that's interesting. And whether that can happen, whether sort of cataclysmic type events like that could shift things and actually progress us further or quicker through this precession of the equinox, or whether it's predetermined and we can't, I don't know. But that's an interesting sort of concept to just be able to go, that's interesting. And that's what I do with most shit. I go, interesting. Not like that's, not a certainty. But anyway, let's get back into this. So let's have a look at the, I'll show you two things. We'll have a look at the chart. Right. So here I'm using the tropical zodiac, right? So the difference is basically the tropical system is using the movement of the sun and imagining, presupposing a zodiacal belt, right? Or a zodiac, which basically means circle of animals into the sky, whereas the sidereal system, which is Vedic astrology, Eastern astrology, they're using the fixed stars or the constellations in the actual sky. And there's a difference between those two because of the precession of the equinox. And when this happened, this is the 21st of December, 2020, right here in Australia. Here we've got Jupiter and Saturn. In the Western tropical zodiac, it happened in 0 degrees Aquarius. There's the air sign. It's been happening, this conjunction, in earth signs for quite some time. A couple of hundred years it's been in earth signs. So what have all the global wars been fought on over the last 200 years? Guess what they've been fought on? They've been fought around resources and ownership and occupation of land, earth, right? So this Saturn Jupiter conjunctions have been like, who's going to be where and who's going to control the resources and who's going to live where, and like the invasion of, Germany into Poland and Japan into Hawaii and places like that, where these wars got triggered off because they wanted to occupy land for whatever reason. So now we're moving into air. So we're having these battles on air. What is air? Is information, and also air is the mind. So the new war isn't fought over geographic location. I feel like we've worked that out. Although you might have Putin's going to Ukraine. They're telling you he wants to occupy Ukraine. No. There's so much beyond what the media is saying I'm not equipped or knowledgeable enough to know, but I just know that what the media is telling you is fucking bullshit, because that's what they do. So don't buy the media. If you're buying the media, you're probably watching the wrong YouTube channel right now. But if you're not, you're awake to like what's going on. You have the ability to question things, and you're probably going, what the fuck is going on? So let's use the sky map to help us, and let's use Star Wars to help us. Literally Star Wars, right? Astrology. But here we go. Jupiter, Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. Here's the sun just moved into Capricorn. So this is the solstice, and this is happening in the solstice, right? So this Aquarius is ruled by two planets, which is in traditional astrology, Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, and Saturn also rules Capricorn, right? In modern astrology, they've given Uranus, planet of freedom and liberation, independence, individuation. They've given that co-rulership of Aquarius. But the traditional sort of rulership is Saturn. It's still the ruler of Aquarius in my terms as well. It doesn't lose its rulership. And for the powers that be, I know that they use that as a significant rulership, right? So the other thing that I wanted to show you was this is happening in the Western zodiac, right? In the sidereal, right? So in the sky, this conjunction happened in Capricorn. So let me show you really quickly in Stellarium. I'm just gonna full length this video with no breaks and talk. So there's not gonna be any fancy editing to cut out these little bits. So thank you for your patience. And I'm by no means an expert in all this tech stuff, but this is Stellarium, and Stellarium helps us to look at the actual sky and the constellations or fixed stars within the sky and look at where the planets were. So I've set this for the same date here, although it's the 22nd. Go back to the 21st. There we go. And here's Aquarius. See, you'll see the water bearer, right? Let me just pull back a little bit so you can see that. There's the water bearer. And okay, so there's Pisces. You can see Pisces fish, right here. You can see Aquarian water bearer here, and you can see Capricornius here, which is Capricorn, the fish-tailed goat. All right, so let's zoom into these guys right here. So right on the head of the goat there, right on the top part of Capricorn. So this is sorry, it's a bit. This is what would be happening in the sidereal zodiac. So this is where the actual planets were in the sky. So just getting in, sorry, patience. There we go. And there we have Jupiter, Saturn conjunction, right? So I'm set this for the Southern Hemisphere I was. So in actual fact, it's 21st for us. I think the actual conjunction, oh no, it's there, yeah. Yeah, 21st in the Southern Hemisphere, 22nd in the Northern Hemisphere, but that's the solstice. Right as the sun moves into Capricorn, we have the solstice. To have this conjunction on a winter solstice in both systems of astrology in signs ruled by Saturn means that this next period, at least 20, but probably 200 years, that the Saturn is going to surpass Jupiter in power and become the new sort of governing, ruling authority here. So this is the fall of Jupiter. But the Jupiterians, because they're greedy fuckers, the empire, in other words, they've used this alignment to go for what? Fucking to go for it. The pandemic was to create mass inoculation. Look at that. That's like a, I don't know, that probably tell you it's a satellite, but could be something. So they'll use the pandemic, mass inoculation, but that was just control, right? You've got now this war, but that's a crashing of the financial system. Like they are going full pelt to push their agenda of more control, more power for them, less for us. And I feel that as we get into the next couple of months, that we're going to start to see a lot of cracks. And why am I saying this? Because what's been going on outside of the mainstream media since this Putin war, right? We just, the mainstream media just dropped the COVID thing. There's a little bit on there, but it's nowhere near as what it was, right? And then all around the world at the same time, there's this easing of restrictions and dropping of mandates. And why? Because information, the truth, right? The truth doesn't need defending. The truth will always find the light. And information has been coming out in like extreme amounts and into the hands of fucking pretty powerful people, professional people, that's showing the way in which there was organized premeditation, coercive efforts. Like this was an orchestrated pandemic. This wasn't just like a leak from a biolab. This was orchestrated. This was planned. Event 201. You've seen that, right? Event 201. But this was planned. This pandemic was a pandemic, and it was planned. And what's happened as a result is people have lost their livelihoods, their lives, their loved ones, their businesses, their families, their culture, their communities have been just decimated. And we're just starting to see the snowball effect of the health implications from the juice, right? And it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Like sudden death of people, well-known people dropping, sports people dropping, you know, doctors dropping. This is just the beginning. We don't know. Normally, it would take at least 7 years for a safe and effective vaccine to reach the market. This was like 3 to 6 months. So there's no long-term studies done on the long-term implications of this type of brand new, it's not even a vaccine, it's more of a gene therapy. There's no long-term studies done, so we don't know the long-term repercussions. And I'm not having to go with those that you that did it and took it, that's fine, but I would suggest a cleansing protocol. So get on Google and Telegram and look up cleansing protocols to cleanse as best you can and support your system. But number one, sunlight. Number two, water. Get plenty of those into you. Sunlight and water. So really remember, the sun is the healing source. It's the healing, it's a life-giving source. So get sun. But anyway, little digression. So we've got a lot of information that's coming out, and you don't have to look just past the mainstream veil of lies to sort of find it. It's there, and it's coming like a storm, like literally a storm. And that word storm is what made me sort of start putting a lot of this together, because Neptune is the god of the storm, and in particular, a particular type of storm known as a tempest. And a tempest is, let's have a look what a tempest is. So here I've got my tool stuff up. Let me just bring up another window. Just see. Yep, there we go. So tempest, a violent and windy storm. This is the type of storm ruled by Neptune. Okay, let's quickly go back and look at the chart, and let's fast forward it now from this event. Now, when this conjunction happens, this is the seeding of the starting point. It's the seed that's placed. It's not the fruition of that. We start to see that when Jupiter moves, because it moves faster than Saturn. Jupiter takes 12 or so years to get through the zodiac. Saturn takes almost 30 years. So Jupiter will pull ahead like the moon would from the sun, right? So this is the new moon of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And what we're going to see this year is the beginning of, like, what is this this phase, a bit of the fruition of like a bit of like, oh, that's what's happening. So if we go to now, we'll notice that Jupiter is in Pisces with Neptune and moving towards a conjunction. We've got the final days. We just had the Virgo full moon. We've got the final days of the sun in Pisces, and then we will have, if we go forward a couple of days, we will have the spring equinox, which is the beginning of the astrological year, with the sun moving into the sign of Aries, and the sun is crossing that point from southern declination to north declination, crosses the equator or the equatorial point, and we have this equinox, right? Equal day, equal night. And it's the beginning of spring for the northern hemisphere. So we are in the sign of Aries, right, which is about new birth. So there's a new phase that's beginning. And this new phase is going to be a really interesting one, because we're still going to have a hell of a lot of Pisces energy, in particular Jupiter and Neptune. These are the co-rulers of Pisces, right? Jupiter is the traditional ruler, and Neptune is the modern ruler. There's interesting influence with these planets, though. Jupiter and Neptune come together roughly every 13 odd years. The last time was in Aquarius in 2009. So it's not a huge, unusual alignment. But when was the last time Jupiter and Neptune were in Pisces together? Well, that was 1856. So that's their cycles, to come together in the same sign like that's around 160 odd years. For that to happen. So no one earthbound at the moment in a physical form has been or witnessed what this type of influence is going to be. Now, we're already seeing some pretty intense weather. So I would think that between now and at least the end of May, I think early May, we get Jupiter moving into Aries for a little bit before it ducks back with its retrograde into Pisces. But I would think that we will potentially see an increase in the worldwide catastrophic storm type events over this period of time. So if you live in an area that's prone to these types of events, whether it's cyclones, tornadoes, typhoons, flooding, even extreme fire events, just like firestorms and things like that. If you live in those areas that are prone, I'm not doing this video to scare you. I'm doing this to prepare you. So preparedness is having a plan, having extra water, having some food, having some fuel, having some way to communicate if things go down or haywire, having an exit plan as well. So if there is rising floodwater or an impending, storm or fire, you've already pre-planned, like, hey, look, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. So I would think it's probably a good idea to do that. Now Jupiter, right, it could be empowered in Pisces, but Pisces is a mutable water sign. So it is empowered, but it's not as strong as what Jupiter in Sagittarius would be, the fire sign, right? Neptune, Jupiter deals in expansion and more, right? So we get more of this Neptune energy. It was when the sun moved into Pisces that we had this transition of narrative from pandemic to world war, right? And it was during this Pisces season. What's happening in Pisces season? We're in the mutable water realm. Water is emotions, mutability is vulnerability, change, adaptability, there's flux, there's turmoil, there's and what really happened was like, people are emotionally vulnerable in this period of time. So we just have this changing of the story. The same thing that was happening then was on the 24th of February when this happened was this guy here, Mercury, the hermaphrodite, that goes both ways and plays both things, the forked tongue, the trickster, ruling our media, the messenger of the gods, right? He was making a square to the planet of change, and we literally had this shift in narrative, like pretty sudden shift in narrative too. So Neptune in Pisces is transcendence. Neptune has a dissolving influence. It breaks down the barriers of what is physical and what is not physical. And I feel what's going to happen is that as Jupiter can inflame or empower or increase the Neptune qualities, and Neptune can be this uncertainty and what the hell and a loss of clarity and focus and but it is extreme imagination and fantasy, and we can be using that energy to really open our psychic senses and meditate and disconnect from the mundane stuff, have spiritual, mystical, transcendental type experiences. But for clarity, rational, and discernment, and to know what's going on, it's a bit of a struggle because we're opposing this Virgo energy, and Virgo is the discerning, like analytical, like make sense of stuff. Pisces is like nothing needs to make sense. It's all just we're all this ocean of oneness. So yeah, while I see that Jupiter is going to inflame a lot of the significations of Pisces, I feel like that. Of Neptune, I feel like Neptune is going to dissolve some of Jupiter's power. Literally, because power needs some sort of structure to it for it to be effective, right? It needs some sort of base to have it. And Neptune is the dissolution of that structure, right? Neptune dissolves. And while this is going on, if we move forward in time to the 12th of April to get to the exact alignment of these planets, so the influence now is starting to build, and the exact conjunction with Jupiter and Neptune happens on the 12th of April. So let's just get there and let's have a look at some other things that are going on. So we've got the nodes at 22 degrees. We've got Saturn at 22 degrees. We've got Jupiter, Neptune at 23 degrees and the sun at 22 degrees. So this 22, right? It's pretty significant. And when did the Jupiter Saturn conjunction happen? 2020, which is 2-2. Happened on the 22nd for the Northern Hemisphere, 22nd of December. We're in the year 2022, and we've got this 22 degree sort of point within the sky that's really getting activated. So Jupiter, Neptune rules tempests, tempest-like storms, ferocious, violent storm, that's Neptune. Jupiter, 10 times bigger. That's what Jupiter does. In your natal chart, it makes that area of your life bigger, right? It can make physical attributes bigger. I literally have Jupiter in Cancer in my chart, and I've got pectorals, breasts, you know? So it's a big, powerful influence that tends to expand things. Saturn is squaring the nodes on this point. Saturn is pretty much squaring the nodes from now right through till like May. It'll be moving in this square across these nodal points, this nodal axis. The past, resolving the karma and letting go. Things in the Scorpion, hidden, secretive, manipulative, sexual abuse, you know, all of those things have the potential to come to light. And then we're moving to what? We're trying to get solid ground. We're trying to sort of, you know, have some sort of firm footing. But we can't have that unless we resolve the darkness, the emotional overwhelm, the past. We've got to have this balance. And what Saturn will do when it comes into this square is it'll karmically, Saturn karma, it'll bring some karmic balance back. Saturn in Aquarius, right? And in the tropical system, in the sidereal, in Capricorn, so still very strong. Mars in this conjunction here is in Saturn's sign. So Mars is under the rule of Saturn. Mars is the warrior, right? So I was looking at this aspect and I was thinking around the storm, like the storm and this tempest type storm. And then I'm like, Tool. Let's go to Tool because Tool ties into this. So Tool, in August 30th, 2019, Tool came out with their 5th studio album called Fear Inoculum. Now, I got some of the songs previewed before the album come out. I was able to watch them because they'd done some live shows and people had filmed from the audience, and I was watching them and I was just saying, fuck, like these are heavily loaded, occult, symbolic songs. This is a big, big album for them. And then I remember saying to my brother at the time, going like, fuck this, you got to listen to these songs. Then I pre-ordered and bought the album. I'm a massive Tool fan and got it on that day and got high and listened to it. And I was just like, fuck. And that's when in 2019, that's when I was like, oh shit, like we got some shit coming. Didn't know exactly what, but now in retrospect, we can look at Tool and go, okay, what were they foreshadowing and foretelling us and prophesizing what was to come? Now let's go a little bit deeper because this is where things get a little bit like, oh shit. Tool, Fear Inoculum is the name of the album. Fear Inoculum. Inoculate, to inoculate fear, to eliminate it, right? It's like, that's what needs to happen. What have they been using for 2 years to control people? Fear. You either got the fear of the actual Rona, you got the fear of everyone else, you got the fear of not being able to see your family, you got the fear of losing your job, you got the fear of having to juice up. It's just fear. They used fear. They sold fear on the TV. Case numbers, you know, case numbers. Like it was just this bombardment of fear. And Tool come out the year before, towards the end of that year, with an album saying like, you got to inoculate fear. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Here's the logo, right, or sigil that they chose for this album, Tool, right? It's very symmetrical. Notice how there's a gap between the two O's and everything else is connected. So if we fold this side onto that side, fold it over, like mirror it back onto itself, we get this. That's a sigil. What does that look like to you? Because to me, that looks like a syringe, an old, you know, one of those old ones from like, you know, the plague days, or a needle, right? So Tool have an album come out called Fear Inoculum, Get Rid of Your Fear, to inoculate fear. In 2019, right before the pandemic. I managed to catch them right at February of 2020 before this really kicked off. They played Rod Laver in Melbourne, and I saw them. It was like, yes, that was the 6th time that I've seen them live. Their music is heavy. It's not dark. It's fucking light. If you prejudice against them, you haven't explored their lyrics and been a long-term fan, because they are one of the most spiritual band. Yes, they are occultists. Danny Carey sets up his drums in the same pattern of the Enochian system of magic, right? These are occult practices. When you listen to their lyrics, even way back in Anenema, right? They had a song Third Eye, right? In that, they had 46 and 2. Right ahead of me. That's about your genes and being able to unlock the dormant 2 strands of DNA that really awaken you. You become more of an awakened person. Lateralist, their album, I think it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, Lateralist came out. And the second song's called The Grudge. That's a song about Saturn. You have Parabola in there, and it's like, the separating the body from the mind when you're overanalyzing and overthinking it. Lateralist, their title song on that album, is a spiritual song about black and white being the first things you see before you come into this world, and then red and yellow then come to be, and all these other aspects, right? And it's about the spiral, the never-ending spiral of eternity. Massive occult. Now, occultists are just people that use hidden energies, right? I'm an occultist. I'm a energy healer. I do sort of quantum Reiki energy healing, past life regressions. I'm tapping into the unseen. That's what occult means. It's hidden, concealed. It's not necessarily bad. There are dark occultists called black magicians, hence empire. There are light occultists, white, grey like Gandalfs, or whites like the Jedis. So occult isn't bad. If you're prejudiced for that term, you need to challenge your beliefs around that, what you've been told. That's my point of view anyway. So here we are, Tool coming out with an album 2019, just before all this kicks off, called Fear Inoculum. Their logo, their sigil, the way they literally makes a syringe. Like, it's like, okay. Now you might go, oh, that's just coincidence. Okay, well, there isn't such thing as a coincidence. A coincidence is a term that we've been told and in programmed to believe that when you hear coincidence, you can dismiss it. But a coincidence is exactly that. They're two things that are connected, more like synchronistic. These things are connected. So then we explore, right? We explore their album, and I've been exploring it. Fear Inoculum, that is literally about the deceiver finally being chased away for good. The deceiver is fear, and those that use fear to gain something, right? They use fear to gain. That's the Jupiterians. That's the empire. They're using fear to gain. And what we need to do to beat the empire is to inoculate our fear, to eliminate it. We don't have any more fear anymore. We can overcome it. The second song, Pneuma. Pneuma is another word for breath, which is spirit. And in this song, they're basically saying, breathe, connect to your spirit, wake up. Literally, the song in this one, it's wake up, child, wake up. What's been happening for the last 2 years since this album was released? Mass awakenings. What's happening is the child is awakening. And I'll come back to that. I'll make a note here, child awakening, because I'll forget otherwise. I'll come back to that and show you in astrology where the child is awakening and why it needs to awaken. Invincible is literally about a worn out spiritual warrior that's putting on his armor for another battle, like descending down into the darkness. Where have we been going? Holy shit, we literally descended. But in that, it's rise. Stay the grand finale. Stay the swan song of this epic fucking tale of humanity. Like, rise now. So yes, you descend, but you've got to rise. Chocolate Chip Trip is Danny Carey, the drummer, my fucking all-time favorite drummer. Just a fucking wicked drum solo. So just go and listen to this album. It's fantastic. If you're going to listen to it, download the lyrics and listen to it and read them. Go do a lot with their music. It's powerful, powerful stuff. If you want to, smoke a little spliffy, it's very awakening. Here, song number 9, Tempest, written with a 7. right? Written with a 7, tempest. Why would they put a 7 instead of a T? That's interesting. But here's that tempest sign. And then I'm like, Neptune, the tempest. Jupiter, Neptune. Fuck, that's a big ass storm. Ladies and gentlemen, the storm is upon us. I'm like, where is this fucking storm? Where? And then I see what's going on in this, and they're pushing this narrative and they're concealing this other stuff, and it's building with momentum. And there's a storm coming. There is a storm coming. So as an astrologer, I'm like, well, where is this storm? Oh shit, Jupiter, Neptune, right? But then let's pull Saturn into this. Tempest with a 7. Moon, Sun, Venus. Sorry, Moon, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. 7. Saturn's number 7. Saturn is 7. Saturn, the Jedi. Saturn, authority, as in right, righteousness. What, you know, it's the cosmic law authority. Saturn in Aquarius is cosmic law. Saturn in Capricorn is government law, right? Or man's law. Saturn in Aquarius, it's cosmic law, you know, and he is the great equalizer. Saturn comes in and just like he gets the final say. Saturn gets the final say. He's the god of karma and the grim reaper. What's he reaping? Well, what have you been sowing? And the Jupiterians, because this Saturn Jupiter conjunction happening in Saturn's house on Saturn's winter solstice, right? Saturn's like, I'm patient. I've got time. In fact, I am the god of time. I rule time. Go on, go forth. Now let's look at the Tempest lyrics. Heat, lightning, flash, but don't blink. Misleading, tranquility, ruse. You're going to happen again. That's what I think. Follow the evidence and look it dead in the eye. You are darkness, trying to lull us in before the havoc begins into a dubious state of serenity and acting all surprise when you're caught in the lie. They've been caught in the lie, literally been caught in the lie. And these snakes in the government, in the media, and these corporations and these fake ass celebrities and these, you know, snake poison pushers, they're snakes. They got caught in the lie. We know better. It's not unlike you. We know your nature. Blame it on the bastards when you're blowing out. Shame on you. No amount of wind could begin to cover up your petulant stench and demeanor. We're not buying your dubious state of serenity. Acting all surprised when you're calling like karma's cookies and creams, or so it seems. Right? They lulled them into this false sense. Right? And I feel like that's what's been happening since the Biden administration. He's a puppet. He's installed there. He's not that actual real person. He's playing that role. And what he's doing is he's pulling everyone else out that are in empire that are feeling like, hey, yeah, we fucking stole the election. We got away with this. Oh, wow. Fuck yeah. We can do what we want now. Dubious state of serenity. Yeah. Calm before the torrent comes. Calm before the tempest comes to rain all over. Right? And a tempest must be true to its nature. It must be just that. Now, this last little bit, control your delusion, insane and striking at random, victim of your certainty. And therefore, your doubt is not an option. Blameless, the tempest will be just that. So try as you may, feeble your attempt to atone. I'll be screaming, oh, no, we didn't this or no. Your words to erase, all the damage cannot. Nothing they can say can change what's happened or stop what is coming. A tempest must be just that. There is definitely a tempest on its way. Let's come back to the astrology, right? While all this was going on, at the beginning of 2020, before this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, because that was at the end of 2020, at the beginning, we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, right? And what we've been seeing come to light is and we're witnessing and we're getting to see it, is all the ways in which these governing systems of authority, government and the medical system and the financial system and the education system, all of the dark corruption that has been used to disempower people that are dependent on those systems is coming to light. And this waking up of the child, right? This Pluto is in direct opposition to Cancer. Cancer is the child, right? And it's like, wake up, child, now. Now, if you are in a, how do you know if you're in a childlike state of conscious awareness? Well, you're dependent on external authority, right? Just like a child is dependent on its parents for its life, right? If you're in a childlike state of consciousness now, you're asleep and you're still believing that that Carl Stefanovic and those Muppets on TV are doing the right thing. They wouldn't lie. Look at, they're so funny. And I'm telling you, you're in a childlike state of consciousness. They're part of this media snake, just, you know, propagandist arm of these ruling elitists. That's all they are. And they're just going to be cast aside in this new reality that's coming. But this childlike here, right? It's time to wake up, child, down, right? You've got to grow up out of that level of consciousness. You've got to take personal responsibility. You've got to become more Saturnian. These systems that we have been lying, or not lying, but depending upon, have been lying to us. In fact, what they've done is they've created these systems that actually cultivate dependency upon them, right? To keep us where? Like the fucking child asleep. The child needing the breast of the mama. We've been sucking on the breast of this beast for too long. So you got to wean your shit. Get off that now. Time has come. This isn't a video to scare people. This is an awareness video for preparedness. You know, go watch the Star Wars movies, especially the last 3. Go and listen to some Tool. Have a little chew. I'll invoke some of Levette. Commit your random act of kindness. Pay it forward. The big secret is that you are love. You don't need to look for it. You are it. You just have to learn how to be it. That's what we're doing here. How do we be it? So this isn't about, oh no, this is just an ability to have a bigger look at what's going on and just step back, because I feel like the next 2 months in particular are going to be pretty wild, right? And they're going to be like, and if you're looking to that for clarity, chances are you won't. But I feel that what's really going on is something so much bigger. And I'm using Star Wars, Tool, and Astrology to help come to that conclusion. I'll tell you right now, I'm happy to be fucking wrong. I'm happy to be the stupid loony on the internet that's like, what the hell is that guy talking about? I'm happy to be that guy. This is just my perspective. This is my take on things. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. Hopefully it's been useful for you, and there's been some things that you didn't know that you now know, and that have been a little bit like, so maybe it's little pieces of the puzzle that you knew or needed to sort of find some clarity in this really chaotic times. And it's chaotic in the sense that what they're showing us, right? So if it overwhelms you, just always go and take a walk in nature. Go and have a look at a bird song, or, you know, watch a cow in a field, and go and watch a sunrise and swim in the ocean. Just do those simple things. Be prepared, you know, a little bit extra water, a bit extra sort of money somewhere, or a plan if you're in an area where you think you might be vulnerable. Community is really important now. So people, like-minded people that you can sort of like, hey man, we're all good, you know. How big of a storm, how widespread, and well, I don't know. I would think that because this is a cosmic energetic instability, as well as the actual collective here going to be in a really fucking, you know, ungrounded state, that we will probably see as an external representation of that some extreme weather conditions and patterns. Albeit, the empire uses weather modifications to, create drought, start fires, and have extreme flooding like we've seen here in Australia. There's no doubt about that. But they're also they're gonna utilize cosmic energy to empower those things. So, and having said that, there is also the element of Mother Nature, right? Mother Nature, which is down here, this divine mother as well. So I feel like in May, when we get to the eclipse, we may see, and I've said this before, we may see some sort of mass cataclysmic event, like a volcano, earthquake, tsunami combination. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all if around May that is on the cards. So where, who, how, I don't fucking know, right? I'm not that. I'm just like, you know what? The nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio. Last time the nodes were in Taurus and Scorpio like that, right before they shifted, right at the end of that, like I think a day or two before they shifted out, and they shifted into Aries Libra, right, which is where they'll be next. That day was Boxing Day 2004. Do you remember what happened on that day? It's the Boxing Day tsunami in Thailand and that whole region. So this time though, we've got Uranus making conjunction with the node on the eclipse. Yeah, I feel like that. And an eclipse is, again, a chaotic energy, a release. The lunar eclipse is a release of this 6-month period, real extreme energetic release of energy. So I wouldn't be surprised if that release coincides with Mother Earth, a release of her energy as well. So yeah, you might have heard me speak on that before, and maybe not. If you've got questions, comments, or anything like that, leave it in the section below. If you enjoyed this video and you think others might benefit from it, spread it around. Thanks for your patience, and yeah, hit me up. And if you have any questions or anything like that, it's my pleasure to sort of do this work. I love the work that I do. I'm fortunate enough that I get to meet amazing people and help them, recenter and align and find clarity in this really shitty sometimes world. So I'm very honored for that. So thank you. And on that note, peace out.